5 teams actually have a chance to come out the West: the Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, and Suns. It'd be a shock if anyone outside of LA wins, but the Nuggets could actually push the Lakers this time. And I used to think a big trade was necessary, but they already have that third piece. It's actually a little deal that they need. It kind of reminds me of getting married. Chances are the perfect match is already on your team. When I popped the question though, I traded for another little addition to make sure I put a ring on it. Well, that's exactly the Nuggets. This video explains why Michael Porter Jr. is the one, but the extra trade they have to make to get a championship ring. Hey, it's KC. Welcome to AM Hoops. Hit subscribe for 5 videos per week, but hit join if you want a little extra. So many perks. I don't just collect memberships and ignore you guys. One example is a shout out like Basil Diaz, who is a beast in wheelchair basketball, much more athletic than I'll ever be. And also, he requested this video. He wanted to know, what do the Nuggets have to do to get past that Western Conference final and finally win a championship? And the reality is, they're not as bad as their current record. The standings are lying. They have one of the easiest remaining schedules in the league and have been hit with injuries and COVID. In fact, Denver has played the 3rd most players 22 years old or younger. For a contending team, that is insane. Lately though, they have won behind Jokic's usual awesomeness, Jamal Murray heating up, and Michael Porter Jr.'s growth. The difference for MPJ, a position switch. Paul Millsap and JaMychal Green got injured, so Porter Jr. played the 4. They are 5-1 since the switch, and it all clicked against the Pacers. Balanced offense, great defense, and fun. Imagine that. Now, Coach Mike Malone has to keep MPJ right where he is when the vets get healthy. That seems obvious, but you wouldn't put it past Mike Malone to mess with MPJ's role. The coach just doesn't fully trust Porter Jr. because of his defense, which we'll get to, but MPJ raises their ceiling. His recent stats make you go,
Things that make you go,
After his return from COVID until mid-February, MPJ had about 12 points, 6 boards, shot 36% from deep. In the last 10 games before the break though, over 16 points, about 9 boards, 48% from 3. That offensive production isn't just important for MPJ. When he plays like that, the Nuggets win. Denver is 6-1 when their big 3 each score 15 or more points. The other thing I love about Porter Jr. in this offense is his ability to play with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Porter plays off the ball and mostly spots up, scores in transition, or cuts. That is so impressive for a prospect like Michael Porter Jr. Most guys with his hype are on a losing team running the show. The fact that Porter can work without the ball in his hands makes Jokic and Murray better. That is extremely hard to find and will punish a defense. In the playoffs, Porter Jr. will be impossible to help off to defend the Jokic-Murray pick and roll. Murray and Jokic have to keep playing at this current level to contend, but Porter is the X factor to a championship offense. So no, do not trade Michael Porter Jr. I'm on record in the past at saying that they should, but only for like a game changer, like a superstar James Harden, or another guy who's elite and can play off the ball like Bradley Beal. But with those guys off the table, like this current version of Michael Porter Jr. is it. All they need is a smaller move to help improve the defense, because MPJ is still a drop-off from JaMychal Green and Paul Millsap. So the Nuggets trade RJ Hampton for PJ Tucker. I know fans hate to see youth go, but you can't have it all. In almost every case, a team can't build for the future and win now. You gotta pick one. The Rockets are picking a path. They say they want a young player for PJ Tucker, not picks. Hampton has shown flashes when called upon this year. Since getting minutes, he's scored an efficient 5 points, 4 boards, 1 assist. Those numbers aren't eye-popping. It's plays like these. Here, he passes up an easy 2 for an open 3. That's smart. His defense on this play on the perimeter is promising. Houston is obviously rebuilding, and flipping Tucker for a future guard is great. Now, on Denver, I'm not saying that PJ Tucker is an Anthony Davis stopper, because no one is, but he's a damn good option. Look at these defensive highlights against LeBron James and AD in the playoffs. Playing Tucker at the 3 could be a great solution. He's played center and power forward recently, but he's played the small forward position most of his career. Tucker is the exact defensive upgrade with good corner shooting and playoff experience they need. So with that trade, the Nuggets starting lineup, if healthy: Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, PJ Tucker, Michael Porter Jr., and Nikola Jokic. Let's break it down, starting with defense. Gary Harris was the key to Denver's D in the bubble. If he can get and stay healthy, that is huge. PJ Tucker is one of the most versatile defenders in the NBA. That's a great starting point. Harris on the perimeter, plus Tucker all over, really. JaMychal Green, Paul Millsap, and Will Barton, great defensive options off the bench. Offensively, we've already touched at how great Porter Jr. has been in his role, but Jokic is on another level. A career best 27 points, 9 assists, 11 boards, hitting 42% from deep. Jokic is the reason Denver is still in the playoff hunt through a rough start for Jamal Murray and COVID for Porter Jr. And this is my prediction for Nikola Jokic. If healthy, he will be top 2 in the MVP discussion by season's end. I think he'd already be there if the Denver Nuggets had a better record. And the thing is, they will have a better record because of the easy schedule we talked about and the fact that they'll be fully healthy, hopefully with the Michael Porter Jr. position switch too. All this means that Michael Porter Jr. should be off the trade table. But what about Jamal Murray? He was disappointing to start this season, and Paul Pierce just dropped this bomb.
If there's a move out there you can make to vault this team back into the top 4, I think you got to do it. And that may mean sacrificing Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray?
What? I mean,
you mean Michael Porter Jr.?
Listen, if you could get a bill for Murray, would you do it? If you want something, you got to give something. If you want to take that next step, it's going to cost you.
Yeah, okay. First of all, the Wizards don't want Jamal Murray. They would demand MPJ or no deal, so that scenario is unrealistic. Second, Murray's been great recently. He scored 22 or more points the last 12 games since mid-February. That included a 50-piece with no free throws, a first in NBA history. Murray has proven he can light it up in the playoffs. I would trade him for Bradley Beal, but not much else. Paul Pierce is ridiculous. So if you stopped watching the Denver Nuggets after the beginning of the season, they're a totally different team. Like, Jokic is still playing like an MVP, but the role players around him have stepped it up. Michael Porter Jr. is the X factor, but a PJ Tucker trade would put a ring on it. So guys, real quick, Denver Nuggets playlist for you. And while I said Michael Porter Jr. trade is not realistic, these are the realistic trades before the deadline.